Hello and welcome to Can't Find My Way Home, the podcast where expats from around the globe talk about the music and art scene in their adopted home. I'm your host, Craig. I was joined by Tom Daly for episode 7 of Can't Find My Way Home. Tom's an American expat and has been based in South Korea for the best part of 25 years. We cover Tom's influences, musical tastes and inspirations that led him to fronting numerous bands. We also get into some of the challenges of playing with local musicians, as well as the changes in the live music scene in South Korea. There's chat about band democracy, the pros and cons of running a live bar, and where to find like-minded musicians if you're new to the country, as well as an excellent top 5. Without further ado, Tom Daly.
There is not anyone else that's related, that plays a musical instrument, that sings, does anything artistic relatively. It doesn't mean they don't appreciate that, they just don't do it. So I started singing to myself just along with the radio when I was young and felt I could go with it. And then when I heard probably about early teens, I kind of keenly was more aware that I thought I could sing. And then I heard, Bad Company and Free and Paul Rodgers' voice. And I was singing along with that, and it sounded very much like it, and I was told such, so I started pursuing it even more so, trying to find burgeoning bands, at the age of 13 and 14. But the first band was 15. I was 15. I forget the name. I still have a picture of the first gig that we did. I was on Facebook and saw the guitar player was on there, and I saw his pictures. And it was funny because, we were playing things that a mid-70s band, rock and roll band would play, like a lot of Kiss, Aerosmith, Beatles, Rolling Stones.
What was cool at the time?
Oh, Kiss was very cool at the time. It was very anarchic, as we were saying before. It was, wow, wait, these guys, dressing in makeup. The New York Dolls weren't as commercially successful, so the makeup aspect really didn't hit home as much as Kiss did with many people. But and years later, I posted a picture on Facebook, and Neil Bukowski, who well, but for everybody out there, is a wonderful bass player and has a array of 6 and 7 string basses. He looked at the picture and he said, "Man, the stance that you have right there is the same stance that you had when we played together in the '99 band all the way through the 2010s." So I guess that's one thing that I remember about it, that first band. So, and then some more in high school, college. One of the reasons I joined the military was because I was in a band in college and I didn't pay attention to my studies. The band did well. The college asked me to take a semester off to reassess my educational goals, and I just didn't have it in me to keep. I tried night school and all, or whatever. I needed something to get out, and I still was at 19 at the time, so I joined the U.S. military and did that for 20 years. And throughout the time there, I had various musical efforts, but with the various amount of moves that I made between primarily Korea and the East Coast of the United States, it was hard to get in a band and or be able to commit to something, knowing that you might have to leave probably have to leave the country within a matter of months or so. So coming back to Korea in the 90s, played in bands here and some cool names. In Def Delay was one band that we had. It was a rock and roll band.
What kind of era are we going back to, Tom? What kind of
early 90s, attempts at hair metal at the time. Of course, you're in the military, you have short hair, so hair metal is probably not the best way to describe it. You could bang your head, all over the place, but still, there's nothing going back and forth like early Motley Crue.
Yeah, exactly. The enthusiasm's there for it.
Yeah, it is. But then the audience really doesn't, as much, at the time too, playing in Korea, and this is where I was at. Equipment was the hardest. It was the biggest challenge. Nobody really had, large scale equipment like drums, keyboards, PA systems, amongst the expats who were over here. And probably the linkage with the Korean establishments that do have the equipment wasn't there yet. I was living in the suburbs of Seoul, so I didn't know to get into Seoul proper and where the nightlife was and where there was live music playing. But that by the mid 90s, that when I moved back to Korea, I was self-correcting because there were by that time a lot of places to go and play and hang out and inspire one to get your own band going. So yeah, and then starting in the mid 90s, I've been playing since playing for what now, 25 years here in Korea, having a great time still doing it. Lots of different bands, meeting a lot of different people, playing with expats and local Korean musicians as well, small places, festivals.
What would you
good things to say about it?
Yeah, excellent. What would you say is the thing that's changed most then in those 25 years? Is it the influx of English teachers, or people just traveling, or guys working on business through the US military? Maybe they're contractors. Or what are the biggest changes you've seen?
I think the biggest changes just have to do with musical preferences. I mean, the explosion of hip hop and rap music has really become the primary music genre, I think, that people gravitate towards, both in what they listen to and what they go for when they go out for a weekend night. They want to go to a club or bar that has music playing they can dance to. And I think that the live music aspect has fallen off as a result, because that genre doesn't necessarily lend itself as well to live performances where you have instruments, guitars, bass, amps, and things like that. So I think that probably lessens the number of people who are interested in you can call it rock and roll or blues rock or whatever, the stuff that I grew up playing and to a degree still do play. So lesser number of people who are interested in that at a young age and pick up an instrument to go ahead and play as much. And a lot of the technology has changed as well, because now you don't necessarily, I don't want to say need to have musical talent, but you can still produce probably quality music without maybe being able to play an instrument or sing, and use your computer to create. And that itself, DJs do that. A lot of music that we listen to today, is done and created that way, I think. So, it doesn't lend, again, for having live performance or live bands per se. So that also results in lesser number of venues who will use that as a primary form of entertainment, because there are lesser people with that, and there's more money to be made in having a DJ, especially because it's less expensive probably. I think that's probably been collectively the biggest change in what's affected live music and music I like to play or go out to watch and see, or when you're trying to find new musicians to replace one person, or starting up a band for that matter.
Yeah, that's a nice segue into my next question, actually, because having been there for such a long time, for 25 years or so, it's this kind of continual rolling cast of band members. And where do you find these like-minded souls to join you in making the musical madness?
That's a good question. I think the first thing is true as it was 25 or 50 years ago, or however, as it is now, is the perseverance, and somebody in the band or going out and trying to find people. Technology is great nowadays to try and connect with people, though nowadays there's so much out there, so many different forms of connecting. Some of the traditional ones now are things like Facebook and Craigslist, which people have kind of moved away from almost. So, and where do you find, you end up having to know where do people actually go to get their information if they're interested in music. And hopefully you hit the gold nugget in doing so. I think here in Korea, word of mouth is an excellent method. Going to open mics, jam nights, and where live music is being played, so your face gets to be known, or you get to know the people, and you can interact with them and branch out amongst musicians. There's a lot of group private pages on Facebook or public pages for areas, for bands, for music genres and styles. And that's another way to find people. But, we've been fortunate over the last, the B3 band, which is the one band that, I've been consistent with the last, say, 13, 14 years. This iteration of the band, we've had more or less intact for 5+ years, except for a few changes in the rhythm section, which is pretty unprecedented, I would think, anywhere for a cover weekend band like we are, whether it be, Germany, whether it be the US, whether it be Korea or Scotland for that matter. So
it's not the easiest thing to do, to maintain these relationships, as well as, enjoy yourself and get into the music. But there's all these other extra things that get in the way, family life, or people that their time's up in the country, or they just decide to move on for one reason or another. It's never the easiest thing to do.
No, you're exactly right. And I mean, one premise, that I've always had with the guys I play with, I said, look, we're here for a reason, and family always comes first, and we've got to be respectful of our work environment because that's what brought us here. So, just be, I ask and I try to be, honest with everybody in the band about what's going on so we can, resolve any issues way in advance and have some understanding of that. I think one of the biggest things that, you mentioned that is it is difficult, but as I think anybody gets older, you develop some skill sets to interacting with people, conflict resolution skills, problem solving skills, and you have a bit more understanding, I think, about you. So, what might have broken up a band in the, when you're in your 20s, when you're in your 40s or beyond, is like, okay, well, we can work around that. Imagine if the Beatles had that, those type of skill sets, when they back in 1970. I mean, we're at the 50th anniversary of the breaking up. I was reading a bunch about it today, and maybe they still be playing together, on and off. Like,
let's not get into the Yoko question then, or not. Who's going to be this year's Yoko? Oh God, who knows? It's an interesting point though, because it kind of leads us into another question I had, which was about this mix of people that you've played with, primarily yourself. Like it could be people from the military or from a civilian background, or, as I said, guys like me who were there teaching and working. What was it like, or is there a difference between trying to integrate local people, in this case, South Koreans into the band, or have you met many musicians of this type?
I have. Good question. I mean, we've over the years, we've had. I play with Korean members in bands. I personally have found that sometimes the challenges are the common core background of music that we listened and grew up with. And, because really, in all honesty, a lot of Western music has not been prevalent in Korea on radio stations or video on TV or so over the years for various reasons. You look back in the 60s and 70s, you had the censorship from the Korean government at the time. And since then, there's been a homegrown effort to try and build interest in Korean music worldwide. I mean, the explosion of K-pop over the last X number of years is evidence of that. So live bands and live music and blues-based rock and things like that are probably never really been the most prevalent music format in Korea. So that leads to a lesser number of people listening to it because it's harder to come by. But there's still some great musicians that are here in Korea, and
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and also great writers of songs and creators of content. There's some bands that I really like out here. And I'll mention a few by name: Hertz, Walking After You, Batu, That Monday Feeling, and that's just to name a few that also play and make music. But I've got a few of their CDs around here, that are nice and signed, by the band, but they have a hard time really, probably getting their music out beyond Korea and beyond the wealth of people here in Korea who listen to that type of music. But I think the challenges, sometimes we've found playing with local musicians, whether it be in a jam band, jamming together, or somebody auditioning, is that common core frame of reference, like, hey, we're doing a blues, this is a moderate shuffle in A, 12-bar change here, do a solo here. That sometimes is a bit challenging because I think a lot of our Korean players that I've played with before are very good at learning songs and learning, that particular song and the way it's played. So when you move away from that or do something different, or just say, hey, just jam or whatever, do something by feel, it's maybe a little bit more foreign to them because that's not how they normally play. So that sometimes can enter into one's opinion of it, but if they don't know the reason for that, they sometimes have to come away with a bad taste in their mouth saying, oh, this guy doesn't know how to play, or I can't play with him. And in all honesty, you need to probably kind of understand where he or that or she is coming from with how they play, and maybe use that as a strength instead of see it as a weakness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If and or when you decide to move forward playing together, or even if you're just jamming, try and relate to them in that sense. Now, the language barrier also is a challenge at times too. I think I try and I think we've been successful because I have a Korean language level or ability. So that allows us to bring in somebody and be able to communicate amongst ourselves. And I'll act as the Korean English translation tool as we're doing it.
For those listening, they might be imagining, what are the crowds like in these places that you or I have played in, and venues large and small. Just before we kind of came on here, we were talking about some of the bigger festivals maybe that go on in South Korea. Whether that happens this year or not is another thing. But in the past,
Right.
what kind of crowds can, if we take the audience into this realm, what kind of audiences? Hopefully there are an audience. This is to start with. Hopefully there is someone there. But what kind of crowds can you expect?
Well, there's some really cool festivals that happen here in Korea, and a lot of them are regional. And there's a few producers and promoters that will bring some bands in to play at those, some Western bands. There's not as many, right now there aren't as many bands as there used to be, expat bands. And mainly when you're going away from the Seoul area, the greater Seoul area, you have a lesser number of people familiar with Western music, and they more want to see Korean entertainment. People who are playing Korean songs. And at times, the promoter might spend some money, or the organizers might have some to bring on a burgeoning K-pop group, that and play a 30-minute set. But it's the Seoul area has a lot of different bars and clubs that have live music. Expat ones are closer to where the military base used to be, and there are a lesser number of those as well. But I think there's still venues out there. But you just need to be able to interact with them in a Korean environment. So in our band, we have two people who speak Korean. We're all expats, and that really helps them because there's a trust value that's built as a result. The crowds are very enthusiastic. They don't know all the material that we're playing, and we will shape our set lists and songs that we play to that audience. So we might not play some of the more obscure songs that we do that sound really cool, and maybe instead do something that's more well known that we might not normally do that often, because sometimes you can play a song too much. We learned a few Korean songs, and people are very appreciative about that. At the same time, I'm normally interacting with the crowds in Korean, though my way of doing that is very westernized in the way I interact with them. And talking kind of cheeky, as my wife will tell me. So there's a bit of dumbfoundedness on the part of the crowd, only because they're like, "Where's that Korean coming from?" Right. And then it's related with me, and I'm kind of being very familiar with them, whereas most times entertainers might not be, or Korean entertainers. So it can work, and sometimes it doesn't work, and people get turned off by it, but most of the time they do make it.
If we're looking at a positive way, they're getting the best of both worlds, I think.
That's a nice way to say it, Craig. Thank you very much. I'm going to use that and just say, Craig told me I can say this from now on.
Having sat behind you in many an occasion, I can verify this is fact. So.
I have to tell you one thing I'd like to share is that, you were talking a bit before about the TNT, the 99 bar that we had down in Pyeongtaek, where we had over 60 some odd acts over the whole time we were open. Solo artists, bands, one-off bands, unit bands, with people who work together that aren't that good, but they bring a lot of people out to watch. One of our favorites was one of the bands that you were in the first time we actually met, was with 40 Days.
Right. Yeah.
With yourself and Jeff and Adam and George. I still get asked by my friend Larry, who's about 75 right now. He just loved your version of When the Levee Breaks, and George playing a harmonica on that, playing a harp on that, was just probably one of the favorite songs that I remember from the whole time with all the live music. I
got lucky meeting those guys there. I'll tell you, it was one of those pre-social media things, and it was just it was a right time, right place. But we had a great time playing, and we really enjoyed playing your venue as well, because it was a welcoming and a welcoming environment. But on top of that, it was also a very nice sound we got. So always appreciate.
That took a lot of work. I mean, I'll say one thing. One thing that's challenging here, in any country, I would think, is your band. You walk in and you're using the sound system and the equipment, even of the establishment. So if you got crappy equipment, you walk in and all of a sudden you got a negative vibe about it. Or I'll use Woodstock's drum kit as an example, and I'll just watch your face cringe. And when I see you, I just remember you're always trying to tighten the screws on the hi-hat or so, or the kick drum, being falling apart. But
problems you don't really need at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night,
Well, we played, I'll say this much, ladies and gentlemen out in the audience. One thought I remember is Craig and I played in a Rolling Stones cover band. Actually, I sat in and sang for, a portion of the existence of the band. They were together a long time. But I do remember playing at Woodstock, and we didn't go on until like 12:30, quarter one. We finished at like quarter three, 10 to 3. And I normally didn't have too many adult beverages beforehand, if at all, in a rock and roll singing, because I just wanted to save my voice and it sounded better. And Woodstock had no monitors, so, it would be hard to hear myself anyway. And so we get off stage, 3 o'clock. That's the time I start having a few beverages. And, next thing you know, it's 5:30, with the sun peeking in through those, those painted over windows. And you can hear the honks out on the street of the buses going as the people are cleaning the streets.
The halcyon days, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of good venues, because Woodstock is one of those great venues. Anyone who knows there, who's ever seen a band there, who's ever played there, who had the joy of meeting Mr. Wu, who was a definite one-off character. It was a great place to play. Yeah, it had its ups and downs, of course, with various things, equipment related. But one of the gigs I saw you perform at, or at least I saw the video of, it was these great Korean beer festivals. I'm not really sure if that was the name, but they were outdoor venues that they looked really cool.
Oh yeah, they still do those. It's called the Great Korea Beer Festival, and at its peak was happening in early May and then in early October timeframe.
Right.
And we were fortunate to. I think we were contacted years ago when we first played there, and I kept in touch with the promoters and the organizers throughout the year to see what the latest status was, and then they were very kind. The production company, and yeah, we got to play at those. There was thousands of people at those. Now, granted, the stage sometimes, you're close to the beer tents per se. There were beer trucks or so, and that's where you look and you see all these crowds, and we were off to the side, but we had a good gathering. We got good times. They gave us a good 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock gig set time. So that was after people had had a few beers, or if it was a Friday after folks had gone home, changed and come on out for for the evening. And but that was upwards of a few thousand. Yeah, fun.
Definitely a great time of year. May, the beginning of October, where you miss out the madness of the Korean summer, which is quite nice.
Oh yeah, yeah. But those festivals, as unfortunately, the music is a big business, and so are those type of festivals. It was a festival, with Korean craft beer, there's some quality stuff out there, and I'm a beer snob to a degree. Unless I was in Germany, then I'll just drink whatever they give to me. Probably experiencing that.
It's cheaper than water here, Tom. Scandalous, As the shape of my body has, if you could see me on your... Anyway, enough said about that. Speaking of which, though, so not just your involvement in bands, or we talked briefly there about the venue that you were involved with. What are some of the differences then between a musician yourself and being the bar owner? How do you find that balance between these two acts?
Well, I think both of them are mutually supportive and have their more advantages and disadvantages. I think what allowed us to be successful in getting those 60 acts, and many of them folks coming down from Seoul, and we're an hour and a half away, depending upon how you got down there by car or public transportation. And many times, you finish up late at night. The best thing to do is the buses and trains have stopped. So the best thing to get a local hotel, at a very inexpensive rate. But I think that me being a musician had allowed me a little bit of gravitas with others, because they might know me as a musician, and then they find out, oh, you have a venue that, we can play at too. And yes, we have equipment, and I really strive to get good stuff. Much to my wife's chagrin, when the credit card receipts came in, we did what? We bought what? But that was the thing, is to truly try and make something that was a quality place for people to come and play, and a warm place, and enjoy themselves, and to make sure that we did the right amount of advertising to do the work on our part to get people interested and aware, and to come out and see bands when they came to play.
Have you seen a lot of change in the clientele in the last couple of years, if you're wearing the bar owner hat?
We have. Well, I stopped wearing that, as I mentioned earlier to you before we started, in the soft opening, we closed in late 2018. But there have been a lot of changes. I think, once again, as I was, the people's preferences for styles of music. also lend to where they go at night, and the bars and clubs that have live music, dance floors, loud music are really what anybody in their 20s and 30s wants to go out to, as far as where they want to spend their money and where they want to hang out, as far as entertainment on a weekend. So I think that has decreased the number of live music venues. People who make it a point to say, okay, I'm going out tonight, where's the band playing? There's less of that. And so, unfortunately, it lends itself to a lessening, if not nearly hardly any live music venues anymore in the area that outside of Seoul in many cases. So people who do it, I think, a lot of times for the love of it, knowing that it's probably not the best money-making venue out there, but they themselves, in many cases, are either musicians and can appreciate the hard work it takes and want to do it themselves, want to be part of it, as far as hosting live music and being around musicians.
Is there a couple of name checks you'd like to give to some of the smaller venues that you've played in with your B3 band?
Well, yeah, one of our favorites, I have to say, is the Alleyway Tap House in Suwon, run by a husband and wife, Edward and Kimmy. They have an excellent venue, a similarly impassioned musician. Edward he's a drummer, and he is meticulous with his equipment and a wonderful host. He really does a cool thing. He puts his camera up on the ceiling, attaches it, and Facebook Live broadcasts all the shows that are being played there. So if you play there, you can tell family members or friends, hey, we're going to be playing. You can log on to Facebook, like the page, and watch the show. That's really cool.
I mean, it might be at breakfast time wherever you are in the world, but it's a cool idea.
That's right. But you can also just turn around and watch it, just scroll it up and watch it later on. He's really good with us because he lets us even practice there beforehand, before a show.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I shouldn't say that. Maybe other people would catch on with that. But and then afterwards, staying for a few adult beverages. So that's one place. I mentioned Boogie Woogie up in Seoul is another Gyeonggi-dan area. We don't get out to Hongdae that much, only because B3, we like to, if it was up to us, we'll play 3-hour shows, each Saturday night. We have so much material, and a lot of the stuff we do is improv jam. So songs can end up being, 9, 10, 11 minutes, if they're in the set list that night. And Hongdae lends itself to, you get on stage, you plug in, you play your 45 or 50-minute set, and then you're off and the other band comes on. That I don't think that we match well with one of the biggest live nightclub areas in Seoul, and I don't know it's necessary. They'd probably want us in the first place for the way in what we play in blues and soul and rock and roll, that combination. But there's always a first time.
Definitely the venues that you and I would have played at, as we mentioned, Woodstock before, and even before that, the bar Stompus, where you could pretty much play. You could have your 2.5, 3 hours or more, and you just set up and play all night. And
oh yeah,
these are. Go on.
I said I remember Stompers before Dwayne and company it became a live venue. When it used to be back in the late 80s or 90s, they passed around a microphone, and more or less was you could karaoke with the sound system with a bunch of people in there. And I used to do that a lot on Friday nights, late. Of course, I thought I sounded a lot better than I probably did on their less than quality sound system, but it was fun just the same. So
a bit of a sing song late at night sounds like a good time.
Oh yes.
Speaking of that, Tom, what are some of your, if we take a slight tangent, what about some of your own personal musical tastes and inspirations? Because as long as we've known each other, I've known you to have I remember you had a lot of DVDs in the bar.
Like my friend, yes.
DVDs or CDs? I can't remember, but yeah, there was a lot.
Live concert DVDs. I mean, that's what when we started, really a large screen and projector are not that expensive pieces of equipment. So we put those in there, a 100-foot screen or 100-inch screen, excuse me. And I just started collecting concert DVDs. So to kind of go with the live theme of having live music. If we didn't have live music, I was going to hopefully play live concerts in there throughout the evening to get and maintain that live feel. So I still have 400 or 500 live concert DVDs. I have them migrated to a hard disk or hard drive, so I can take them with me. But these days, there's so much content on YouTube and elsewhere that you can just more or less log on and watch whatever that you like, as opposed to putting a DVD in. But those. I mean, I had my favorites amongst them. I think, some Allman Brothers stuff was probably one of my favorites. I remember an In Excess Live, from Wembley in '91. That was another really good one. And this was, way before even, I used to watch concerts on VHS tapes when I come home after being out all night and I didn't feel like going to sleep. Pop a VHS concert in, pour another drink, and sit there and watch, Stevie Ray Vaughan or Peter Gabriel or U2 or whatever it might be. So this kind of just goes with the love of live music since I was young.
What about your own musical taste as the singer in a band? What kind of stuff gets the old blood flowing?
Gosh,
it's a bit of an open-ended question. Eh? It's like,
yeah, it is.
Because for me, it's a daily thing. It's literally that. It could be a day, 2-3 times a day. I think of something different, and I go, "Oh, I really like this."
Well, it's a good question. With a band, and is it the question? One has to ask oneself is, I like so many different things personally, and yeah, you're right. I have always songs in my head that I'm thinking of, and I'll see something, and it'll remind me of a line in a song, and I'll sing and listen to that, afterwards. But for a band, there's a little bit more critical listening. Listening to songs and think, well, would that one match well with our band, or is that something that people might enjoy, or is that, wow, that guitar part sounds like something one of our guitar players would really play well, or hey, this has some good Hammond B3 sound or keyboard sound. This would, Ray, our keyboard player, would really sound good doing that, or we would. So, my personal, I try not to be too commanding in the song selection process. To try and make it different and eclectic, and everybody have a say in it. But I probably sometimes end up, being the one making the most suggestions. Guys can kick my ass for that if they like. I understand.
Definitely, it's one of those things when you're it's the old democracy band thing. There might be a song that you're not particularly fond of, or you just get on with it. You do your bit and wait for
it. Was funny. I read across a cool a little saying. It was more like it was probably a performance evaluation, something positive about somebody, and I took it to heart and I wrote it down. And I have it on a little note here. It says, "A collaborative thinker, but a decisive decision maker." So kind of the idea of, what do you guys want to think we should do? We're going to do this song, and if you ask some of the guys in the band, they might think that that's how the process goes. I understand and appreciate that, but I think sometimes, the harder thing is to have a good vision for what you in the band, need or where you want to go to be successful, or to be the people to remember you as a band that they want to have back again. And I think that's something that plays strongly into our song selection and what, when, and where, and how we play. Because we want to do it well, and we want to look in the mirror and say, we did a good job. So,
how would you describe the band you're in at the moment, Tom? What would your elevator pitch be?
B3 is the best blues, soul, and rock and roll this side of the DMZ. Really, I think that's blues, soul, and rock and roll has a little bit of a rhyming aspect to it, but it covers a lot of genres of music and a lot of periods. So, I think with that, to try and let people know that, you'll probably know or like some of the songs, anything that we do. Not everything, but a lot of stuff, and you'll have a good time while we're playing, and we're professional, and we bring a lot of experience and enthusiasm to when we play, and I think that'll translate to you, and you're having a good time that night.
So it's does this go back to your own joy of these three genres? Would you say these are your top three, or?
Well, I miss playing, high energy, melodic, crunching rock and roll. I will tell you that much, Greg. I'm a big fan of, for example, I'd love to play some stuff from the '90s. I could do a whole night of that, or a whole band of that. It's just harder to find people who are willing to do that. And also, a lot of musicians who've had experiences playing multiple bands at the same time. Sooner or later something has to go, and a lot of times it's your personal life or whatever. You've got rehearsals and gigs and everything. So I think right now one band is good enough for me. But I wouldn't mind, playing some of the, just some crunch and rock and roll once again. That I did with the '99 band that we did for about 10 years or so. That's fun stuff.
Because one thing I do remember, you have a big repertoire of songs that you know.
Thank you for remembering. Yeah, I sent a
big black book, so to speak.
It is. I was who was I talking with? Somebody about maybe getting a project together, just doing acoustic stuff. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, let me send you a list of songs that I do or know. It doesn't necessarily mean I couldn't do other things, but just to give you a frame of reference, was, I don't know, probably it was it was over more than 1,000 songs. It kind of overwhelmed the person, but I just had good fun about it. I think I have a pretty good range in my vocals to allow me to sing, from low end repertoire, low end register to a little bit higher up, say from Doors to Led Zeppelin. Not as well as Rob did in Over the Hills and Far Away, with the Led Zeppelin cover band that was famous here in Seoul for a number of years, but enough to do a few of them. So, but in the blues band, there's a bit more of a, I say blues band because B3 started out as a blues band, the Bluetooth Blues Band. There go the B3 moniker. Shortened that a number of years ago, so we didn't get typecast as simply a blues band. And with the change of people, of course, we've got a lot of influences between jazz and the American South, and that feel of Mississippi and Alabama, and and some of the feel into the music that brings with us. Great rhythm section. Our rhythm section is collectively younger than the rest of us in the band, so it keeps us, us older guys, on our toes. But they're really super, and I really appreciate that they don't mind playing with older guys. We all kind of get along, and hopefully, act like treat each other as equals in that respect.
Definitely, as they say, like music's the great leveler.
No, it is
in many respects.
Yeah.
Was there any other bands that you've played in recently? Since today's the first time we've talked for some time, but is there anything you've done in between that time in the last 2-3 years?
I regularly sit in with Lance Regan-Deal at the HBC festivals, the HBC festival that Lance organizes every 6 months, and has been going on. It's up on the 15th anniversary this year, if we're able to have it in the May timeframe. But he asked me to do an acoustic set with him each of the festivals, so we do that. And I sat in with the LRD band on a few occasions. We did a really cool Doors tribute band for one of the HBC festivals. All the members of the band were people that Josh on guitar and others. But we did a one-off on that. I've done some acoustic stuff. We took some of the guys in Bluetooth, correction in B3. We did an acoustic thing for a while, 2 guitars, and Tim Gilmore, who ended up playing bass with us, and who's since moved back to Australia. He was on Cayenne, and we play smaller venues. Still, even those smaller venues you play at, we had the cops called on us a few times.
Some things never change, yeah.
Yeah. I guess over the last 3 years or so, it's been primarily B3. We're pretty active schedule, save for the teacher vacation time frames here in Korea. The January and July time frames. But we're steady, and we get we're good gigs, or we keep gigs going. Both we have some military base gigs. They're really appreciative, and they ask us to play regularly, and then a lesser number of festivals these days. But still carving out venues that we know of, and trying to find some new ones to play at in new cities. We're willing to travel now and then.
Yeah, well, it's that old adage as well. When you've played a place a certain amount of times, it's good to get out and stretch your legs in these other places, whether it be in Suwon or Cheongju or Gwangju or all of these other Korean cities that don't really get people out with, of the locals who live there. They don't really get a lot of people visiting.
No, and you're right, but the challenge also is that when you go there the second time, that you don't play the same songs over again, because you can look out at an audience, and I've seen this at live shows where a band is very good, but they've carved out more or less the same songs and the same set for quite a number of years. So it's very professional, but they play the same thing. And you can go in and you watch them play and say, lean over to the guy next to you who's first time seeing them and say, watch, they're going to play this song next, and watch, they'll do this. Which I think it's the onus is on the band to really bring something new regularly. So I see that as having a large repertoire of songs. So 60 songs in a repertoire or so that way when you go somewhere, you might not even play any of the songs that you played when you were there the last time, even if it's you haven't been there in 6 months, to mix it up some. So I think that's real important for a band like us, for a band that's basically playing, I'll be honest with you, playing covers, playing our own versions of known songs, so that way it sounds fresh and for for both the people watching and listening, and then for ourselves as well.
Couple of last questions for you, Tom. Any advice for anyone heading to the Republic of South Korea, or they want to get into the music scene there? What kind of advice would you give someone?
I would recommend, if you can, bring your axe, bring your guitar, bring your and maybe a pedal or two. If you're a drummer, bring your sticks, and if can, bring your cymbals. Korea has a really good music equipment sale, though there's a bit of a price, a markup on a lot of the really high end or better end stuff, just because the way the Korean government has a tax system for music equipment. It's I'll call it considered a luxury item, so it becomes about a 20% increase. Though you can find a lot of stuff available here in Korea. So I'd recommend just bring your guitar and or bring some of your ancillary stuff that you really like. That you're not going to bring your drum kit, of course. You're not going to bring your set of 4 keyboards and the stands that go with them. But when you get here, there's a lot of open mic nights. There's a lot of jam sessions, because in all honesty, from a bar owner's perspective, open mic nights are very good money makers, because you don't have to pay anybody, and the musicians, and you just maybe give them a drink or two, and you have more or less free music to a degree. But it's an opportunity to meet other musicians. Craigslist is not the best, but it's also someplace to look at if you're going to, if you're thinking of coming over here, to see what musicians or bands are looking for. Facebook is also another place. There are a number of private pages that are worth joining. Just go into a search engine and type, Seoul or Korea and live bands or music or whatever, and see what, if you're an English language speaker, what pops up. I think that would be very helpful. But please don't come over here thinking there's nothing going to be happening, because there is a lot of stuff happening, and you can be part of it too.
Excellent advice. And of course, you can also visit the NAGwan music market.
Right.
Where you get lost for days, but we'll save that story for another episode, I think. Last, just bring your wallet, your credit card. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Set the day. You're all good. Tom, last question then. Where can we find the band? What kind of websites and stuff can we find about the band?
Our primary venue is, thanks for asking, is on Facebook. If you search B3 Blues, Soul, Rock and Roll, will pop up. We try and put a goodly amount of content on there, between video and audio and pictures and feedback, and also that's also the primary way we get our information out about gigs, and try and, if you're interested, like the page, you get the stuff automatically. I try and put out some live music inspirationals on a periodic basis, to keep us going, and also just keep in touch with everybody. But that's how the best way to get in touch with us. I'm sure somebody will give me a heads up saying, "Hey, you should have said this."
Right, there's always one you're like, damn. No, Facebook will add those to the show notes, and because I know you post kind of somewhat semi-regular updates, just in case people are wondering what's going on. Or there was one in the last week or so, I think, where you were telling everyone what's the current status of the band. And speaking of that, any gigs lined up this year? Things are somewhat up in the air as we're speaking, but all going well.
Yeah, we like I said, we've got you're right, up in the air, and I think that we all are mindful of the COVID situation and social distancing, and bars are a great place where many different people come together. Well, that can also be a detriment in the situation that we're in right now. So I think all of us. It goes to the larger question of when can we start maybe resuming some of our normal routines. And Korea, we're a little bit, when I say we're ahead, it's just we got hit first, as opposed to maybe some of the other areas that are currently going through on varying scales what Korea went through back in late February and early March. So, to say loosely, I'd love to say we're going to be playing on March 2nd at the Alleyway Tap House in Suwon, South Korea. We talked about that with Edward when we had to cancel our 15 or our 14 March gig because of the coronavirus. So I think we're at the point right now where 2 May might be a little bit aggressive, and we might have to revert back to June as a kind of a start date for gigs, hopefully. We haven't played since January, and we want to get a practice or 2 in there. We have some new stuff we want to add. We've been working individually on it, but I sure as heck hope that the HBC festival can happen on, I think it's May 23rd is the core date. That's the 15th anniversary. We hope to play there, but once again, I think the situation is going to drive a lot of the decision making on everybody when and where they play.
Yeah, exactly. It's a serious situation, but looking on the optimistic side, hopefully when things are safe and we can all get back out there and enjoy some good old-fashioned rock and roll.
Yay.
Or if we can't do that, then do it at home safely. We'll just turn it up really loud.
I'm going to do that later tonight here. I've got some vodka and some tonic and a few limes, and there's going to be some live concert looking tonight, because this has been a great conversation with you, my friend. For those out there, Craig and I played in 2 or 3 different projects together. Stones band, a short-lived kind of rock and roll band, the 4 of us with Red Letter Day.
Good name. It's still a good name for a band.
I think it's a great name for a band. Came up with it. And I'm so used to coming up with names and bands, but you came up with that one. I was like right away, man, that's a good name.
Jinx from the beginning, Tom. That's what it was, man. Never let the drummer be that creative. It's a fluke most of the time, anyway. Yeah. Tom, you ready for a top 5?
Right, lightning top 5. Let's go.
An artist that we should be listening to. Who is it? Who should we be listening to? Tell us someone we don't know.
I would say, if you're a rock and roll fan, you've never listened to Anything Could Happen, the album by Tommy Stinson. He used to be with the Replacements. Came out about 2000 something or other, but it's my go-to rock and roll album.
Fantastic.
He used to be in the Replacement, and it's like the Faces and the Stones and melancholy, cheeky sadness with the best beat ever.
Am I thinking Paul Westerberg?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I'm right. Yeah.
Bass player in the Replacements.
Yeah, right. Good call.
The name of the band is I forget. Just look up Anything Could Happen by Tommy Stinson.
Fantastic.
Bash and pop. That's it. Bash and pop.
I actually came across some music recently myself, just to kind of cut in on your 10 minutes here. A guy called Jackson C. Frank. And okay. I believe the one of his songs was recently used in some kind of big movie. It was out recently. I forget which one, but I didn't hear it on that. I heard it through Spotify or something. But then I read this guy's Wikipedia story. My God, if you're ever in a downer, don't read this guy's story, because it's unbelievable. But the music he made, I think he was found by Paul Simon, or Paul Simon found him and recorded his stuff in the late 60s. So he's very much like Tim Buckley and all of that kind of sound. Nick Drake, I think Nick Drake actually took one of his songs called Milk and Honey. But he's a really late night acoustic vibe. It's fantastic. It's really great. But man, what a story. I won't spoil it for you, but I'll let you Google it away.
Okay.
Jackson C. Frank. Best venue you've played at, Tom, of which there are many.
Of which there are many, yes. I'd be remiss if I didn't say the 99 Bar, the TNT Bar, which are the 2 names of the venues that my wife and I owned and ran. She owned them. I was actually just music, cleanup, maintenance, and the occasional eye candy.
Well, maybe don't sell yourself short.
Don't sell yourself short. You're a tremendous slouch. Let me see. I had a great time playing. I'll just say, for nostalgia purposes, I'll say Woodstock, only because it was a dive on the 3rd floor with terrible equipment, but the vibe when you got on stage playing there was great. Plus the free drinks afterwards, didn't hurt either.
There was some great banter in there as well,
Yes.
And that hole in the stage as well. Luckily, I didn't have to deal with the hole in the stage. I think that was more. There
were a number of occasions over the last few years where, that people went to him, and I was part of it one time. Another said, "Look, let's come in here and just let us clean the stage off. Just take all the crap out, like the chair or whatever, And he punched me in the chest so hard. He called me an MF right there. Just he was laughing, and just gave me a shot of 151. Not that I.
Oh, my God.
But that was a cool venue.
Definitely. Tom, how about a guilty pleasure? A band, an artist, a song that you shouldn't like, but you do?
George Michael, from the Listen Without Prejudice album. I love that album.
I'm trying to remember some of the songs on it now. Yeah, it was
Jesus to a Child.
Jesus to a Child, okay.
That was probably one of the lamer ones, but Waiting for That Day, the video that he had all the supermodels on.
Yeah, right.
He did the version of Stevie Wonder's I Won't Go. But it was a very breakout album for him, but I've always liked listening to that.
Is it not just like a plain white cover, the album sleeve?
I don't recall.
I have a picture. Yeah, very.
Over to computer back like 20 years ago or 15 years ago. So I sold all the CDs. So I don't remember what the album title was like. I think it was black and white. It looked like there was a lot of people on the,
Yeah.
like the crowd.
But yeah, a great singer, great performer, bit of a troubled character like many in the music business are or end up this way. But yeah, no, that's not a bad call. I'll give you that one. You get a pass. So who would you most like to collaborate with and why? You can be in the band or not.
Oh, okay. Let me see. The Expensive Winos, which is Keith Richards' band that he had behind them when he did the solo stuff back in the 80s with Steve Jordan on drums and Waddy Wachtel on guitar and I think Charlie Jordan on bass, Ivan Neville on keyboards. I remember seeing that show back in '88, that live show when Keith played live. But I mean, to put it together, I don't know. That's just something off the top of my head. That was a really cool band, and the vibe on that was nice. That would be kind of cool to do something there. That's what they actually, the name, the 99 Bar, kind of came from a Keith Richards song off the Main Offender album called 999. I thought numbers always have a very powerful meaning or vision in a band name, and I put my wife and I we had to come up with a name really quick, because we were going to get the lights done and everything. She says we need to come up with a name, and I came up with the 99 Bar, and she hit on that right away, and so that's what we were at first. So I guess maybe that would kind of tie it all in together.
That would definitely be an interesting jam session with old Keith and all that other good stuff. Tom, what about your go-to karaoke tune? This is a bit of an ominous question because we could be here forever answering it,
No, my go-to karaoke tune is Honesty by Billy Joel.
Oh, great song.
For years, I used to get hundreds on that one. So, I'll always go to that one.
Oh, it's a nice call.
Yeah, if I'm trying to impress. But, because I'll be honest with you, karaoke is harder because when I get on there, people afterwards, they say, well, I don't want to sing anymore. And I'm not trying to be conceited, but so I like to go and sing the harmonies. And so if I'm there, I try and get people to pick Motown songs so I can sing the high-end harmonies or whatever behind. So that's probably my second go-to karaoke thing.
I had one of those strange reverse culture shocks when I was living in Scotland before moving on to Germany, and I was in a pub, of course, as you do, and I think I was with my brothers. I don't know. There was a bunch of merriment going on somewhere, and in this pub we were in, it was in our hometown, the town I grew up in the old village part of the town, and we went into this pub. Maybe it's like 10, 11 o'clock. I remember being with my two brothers and a bunch of other guys. And then the karaoke machine was there. And of course, I hadn't seen a karaoke machine out in the open for I don't know how many years, And it was, quite the thing. On the plus side, there was no tambourine. So this was great.
Oh, there's too many tambourines here in Korea.
Oh,
too many people play on the 1 and 3 instead of the 2 and the 4. Like polka music, the way they play, have a tendency to play tambourines here in Korea. But there's enthusiasm. I'll say that much.
Exactly. On the 2 and the 4, please.
It usually lasts one round because after one round, what you'll see if you happen to stick your head into a karaoke room is one person singing and everybody else poring over the books about what song should I sing next, not paying attention to the person who's singing.
Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for your time.
I want to say thank you that I met the mustard that you considered me for this show. I really had a great time. I was worried about sounding like an idiot, and I didn't want to. That's why I did all the prep work.
That's my job.
I know, but sometimes I have to capture my own thoughts. There's so many of them going on. I really wish you the best with this, Craig. And if you ever need anybody or help getting with anything, getting people or getting in touch with people, I'm more than happy to help.
Definitely. Tom, take care, and I'll speak to you sometime soon. Cheers.
Very good. Cheers, Craig. Out here. Bye-bye.
We made it to the end of episode 7. I had a great time catching up with Tom. He's not just a great frontman, but great company, and I think that comes across in the podcast. Look for the B3 Band on Facebook, Blues, Soul and Rock and Roll. And of course, if you get the chance, go see them in person. Nothing quite like it. Where can you find out more about Can't Find My Way Home? You can find us on Spotify, search for podcasts and Can't Find My Way Home. We're also on Google and Apple Podcasts under the same name. Also, Anchor.fm is our host, and from there it'll take you to numerous platforms. Over on our YouTube channel, you can find episodes, clips, and a bunch of playlists featuring songs, themes, artists, and more. Finally, on Instagram at can't.findmywayhome, and our main hub is at Expat Music Pod, all one word, on Facebook, or simply search for Can't Find My Way Home. Stay safe and socially distant, and until the next one, cheers.